Koss might not be a brand which is as recognizable as perhaps the likes of Sony, Sennheiser, or even Shure, but it does in fact have a rich history of manufacturing audio products dating back as far as the 1950s. For audio aficionados, the Porta Pro is perhaps the most popular model, but Koss does have quite a number of other headphones in its portfolio. Around a year or two ago, there was a fair bit of hype surrounding one of Koss's most affordable headphones. And then again, around 2 months ago, we saw a resurgence in the hype for those exact same headphones. So at that point I figured, hey, how good can a $30 pair of headphones actually be? Well, so I bought a pair. As it turns out, they can be surprisingly good. The first thing that struck me about the kph30i is just how familiar it looked and felt. I don't mean that in the sense of it looking or feeling like something totally generic, but rather how that retro design made it feel as though it's been in my collection forever. Maybe it's because my very first pair of headphones back in the 90s would probably have been something rather similar to this. There really isn't a great deal to say here, as we've got an essentially all plastic design, with the exception of the foam earpads, the silicone suspension strap, and of course the drivers themselves. Sennheiser uses plastic on a lot of their headphones, even some of their most expensive ones. So if it's good enough for Sennheiser, surely it's good enough for Koss. The other advantage is that plastic construction makes these really lightweight, and that leads to better comfort when wearing them. For a closer look at the build, and in particular the headband adjustment system, check out the link in the description of this video, which will take you to the full written review of the kph30i. So whilst I really liked the retro charm of the design on these headphones, nothing could really prepare me for the pleasant surprise that I was to find in how these sound. Usually I don't pay much attention to hyped products, but in this case I'm all packed and ready to get on the hype train. I just keep asking myself, how on earth do these cost $30? The sound character overall leans on the warmer side, but not so much so as to have an overly negative impact on the clarity and or the detail retrieval, and certainly not enough to make it seem like it's overly coloring the mids. The mid and upper bass is a little prominent, but as a whole it still manages to sound reasonably well balanced, actually surprisingly so. I did try to do a frequency response measurement, but the trouble with these types of on-ear headphones is that their signature can be influenced quite a lot depending on exactly the placement on the measuring rig and how much pressure is being applied to them. So what I ended up doing was to do a couple of measurements and then altering the position slightly, as well as manually adding some pressure to the ear cups. This gave me a few different responses, which I then averaged out. Looking at this average, I'd say that it's at least pretty close to how I perceive the sound signature to be. I'm not sure if that large dip at just around 4 kHz is due to the measuring rig or perhaps some resonance from within the ear cups, but I can't say that it's something which I could really pick up on when listening to these. As we can see, the signature is surprisingly well balanced, and it's only really in the upper treble frequencies that I think the kph30i would have benefited from a bit more energy. Comparing the kph30i to my modified HD58X, we can see that the 58X has a more balanced response along with some more energy in the upper treble regions. It's when I compare these two measurements that I feel the kph30i measurement is reasonably accurate, as it does come across warmer and a bit more bassy than the 58X. There's also a certain sense of smoothness to the kph30i, which I find to mask some of the finer details, at least in comparison to the 58X. But now would be the time to remember that the 58X costs more than 5 times the price of the Koss, but the difference in sound quality really isn't anywhere close to that. To some extent, the 58X kind of just feels like a more refined and reference version of the kph30i, and that's where the Koss really shined for me. Let's face it, the 58X isn't exactly what we would really call a portable headphone. It's large and somewhat obnoxious. It's not as bad as something from Hi-Fi-Man, but still, it just doesn't feel like it's appropriate for portable use. In that regard, the kph30i just makes way more sense, and given the very respectable sound quality that it has on offer, this has quickly become my go-to portable headphones. When I'm at home and listening to the 58X, sure, I can appreciate the sound of the 58X more, but when I take these, it's not like I'm constantly thinking to myself, man, I really wish I had the 58X with me. On the contrary, I'm perfectly content with the Koss kph30i. So I think at this point it's no mystery as to what I think of the value of these headphones. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the best thing about the kph30i is just the raw value it brings to the table. Seriously, for $30, these headphones have no business sounding this good. As I said, generally I'm a person who tends to shy away from product hype simply because I have hardly ever found a hyped product to truly match that hype or my own expectations. But the kph30i is one of those rare unicorns that genuinely did blow me away. The hype is absolutely warranted with these, and they have very quickly become the only headphones that I could personally and without any hesitation whatsoever recommend under the $100 mark. They are especially great for using on the go, as you don't have that additional worry in the back of your mind that you would have if taking along some more expensive headphones. Of course, the only downside would be that these offer practically zero isolation, so they might not be appropriate for public transport, but for everything else they are pretty damn good. I even ended up taking them on a morning jog, and they remained perfectly secure on my head. I'm just not certain on how well they would hold up to sweat and other forms of moisture, so using them during exercise routines might shorten the life of the drivers and almost certainly the ear pads. So, if you have a store near you that carries the kph30i and you can demo it, I really recommend that you do so. But hey, even if you can't demo them, at $30 they really aren't going to break the bank, and I feel confident enough to tell you to just go out and buy them if you like a slightly warm but still balanced sound signature. Worst comes to worst, if you don't like them, you can always pack them neatly back into the box and maybe return them or use them as a stocking filler for the holidays. But I think very few people will hear these and not like the signature. Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you can demo these, do yourself a favor and go out and try them. That's all from me for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.